Hey everyone, welcome to S1MS4. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Melissa, and we are sisters. And of course, we are so excited that you guys are here with us. If you've made it through, this is our fourth of the mini-series, and if you've been with us this whole time, that just means so much to us.
Yes, and hopefully it's been good for you. I actually really like doing this. If you've noticed, if you're watching on YouTube, we're wearing the same outfit. So we're literally recording them back to back.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed it. So I wouldn't mind hearing your guys' feedback if you'd like these from time to time. Because we have other series that we plan on doing.
Yep.
And we had planned on them being more spread out.
Yep, like once a week.
Yeah, for like 2 or 3 weeks, but maybe we'll do some more mini series. It's actually, I would say, about the same amount of time recording as doing
little
2.
Just a little bit longer, but not much. Yeah.
But if we usually record 2, but I guess it's only 1 week's worth. So it'll be more work on my end editing. Womp, womp,
yes.
womp.
Rachel is amazing. You guys, I don't know if we've shared this with you. I'm going to take a second. So we've talked about having this podcast for years. And a couple of years ago, I was ready and Rachel was not. And so we put it on pause. And then she came to me this summer and was like, I'm ready. And I was like, I'm not. Like, I am not in a place I can do this. And she goes, what if I do all the work and you just show up and record? And I was like, well, she goes, I love that. She was like, that would breathe life into me, at least for this period in time. Like, eventually I will take on more, but I was just not in a place that I could commit to anything other than this. And I was like, okay, if you're sure. And so this is happening. We're here because of Rachel. So everyone give her an applause.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So we do post, we have some reels that we've posted and a couple to come that we've made, kind of laughing about the fact that I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Assistant to the regional manager. Same thing. If you don't watch The Office, you're missing out.
Yes. Go watch it right
now. So we're going to talk today, the last one, when conflict doesn't feel resolved. So like you've gone to the person, you've tried, and it's like you're just stuck in limbo. And this is a hard one. It's a hard one to just, I don't really know how beneficial it's going to be. I think it will be, but I think the other ones, there's going to be lots of nuggets people can take. And this is just a hard one. It's just hard when you feel like you have a relationship that matters to you and you're trying to work through the conflict and the other person just really isn't working with you. And there's only so much you can do. But I just want to say, if you're in that boat or you have like long lasting relationships that just don't ever really seem to move past that, remember who you serve.
Yeah.
Remember who you serve. That is what it boils down to. I mean, I can't guarantee that this conflict of yours or whatever the relationship will ever get where it needs to go. But who you serve and where you're pointing yourself is what matters. And you can just continue to grow and grow in your relationship with Jesus. And I always think about when people are married and one person wants a divorce, the other person can still go to therapy on their own.
Right.
I mean, even if the one person's, let's say it's the husband who he's like, I think I want to be done. And the wife's like, will you go to therapy with me? And he's like, no, I think I want to be done. But he's not serving her papers. He's just saying he thinks, as the wife, go to therapy. Like, what can you do in your marriage to help fight for your marriage? What can you do as a person to fight, where you're at? And I have seen marriages be saved that way. From
by one person
doing the work and the other person.
It seems unfair, but it is worth it if it helps the relationship in the long run.
Well, and if those relationships last, eventually the husband's going to have to apologize for that, like that's obviously own to the fact that like I didn't do the work, my wife did.
Well, I always think about the fact that in relationships, when it feels unfair, when it feels like, why am I doing all the work or why should I have to do this? And then I remember I will stand before God on my own by myself and we will talk about my life together. However that works.
Remember who you serve.
Care about anybody else. You won't care about how they treated me or didn't treat me. It'll be how did I treat people and how did I respond to people and how did I show love and how did I not show love? And
exactly. And so, yes. Remember the kingdom perspective. Like there's so much more than just this conflict in front of you. And like Melissa's saying, at some point we're each going to stand before God and be accountable to how we handled or didn't handle situations. And the thing is like, this one conflict, there's so much more in this world than that one conflict. And it stinks. When, I mean, I've been in a 2-year conflict that I couldn't do anything to make it end. I did everything I believed I could, but I couldn't force the other person to be willing to make it end with me. And so I just had to focus on a kingdom perspective and who else I could love and who else I could serve and growing closer and more like Jesus and working on myself. And I think that matters a lot. And then, remember who our comforter is. Like, we're not supposed to feel better by other people all of the time. We are supposed to feel better because of our relationship and our closeness with God. And so draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And Matthew says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Yep. We have to remember where our true source of comfort comes from. And for me, when I was in that 2-year conflict that just didn't seem to, I didn't know if it would ever end. It really messed with my opinion of myself and where my worth lies. Yeah. And it was a long season of remembering constantly where my worth lied and where it laid.
I've had,
where it wasn't.
Yeah. I've had a conflict with one of my kids over this past year. That happens a lot with teenagers anyways, but he just kind of became someone different kind of overnight. And it rattled me because he went from being very affectionate and communicative with me to being like almost like dead in his eyes at me, like almost like he could care less to have me around. And he has said some hurtful things over this past year and a lot of just nothing at all. Like sometimes the nothing at all is even harder. And I have had to go to God over and over and be like, I can just pray for him. I can love him. But I need to remove my feelings and know that I can't need something from my child. Like I want him to be in a good place. I want him to seek after Jesus. I want him to be healthy and happy and joyful, but I can't need him to make me feel a certain way. And because he was really hurting me. Like, and obviously we've had conversations about, do you know that when you treat a person like this, that really hurts? Like, I want him to be a good human being towards people. So we've had those conversations, but ultimately inside I needed to be okay with whatever he's going through. For whatever reason, I seem to be his punching bag a little bit. And that logically, I know as a teenager, he's not going to stay here in this place forever. And he needs to go through whatever's going on in his hormones and stuff. But if I was looking to him to make me feel happy or complete or fulfilled, I'm putting a whole lot of pressure on him that he doesn't deserve. And I'm setting us up for failure.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I had a situation with one of our oldest sons, who he walked away from our family for like a 4 or 5 month period. And I was devastated and I did everything I possibly could to get him back. And some of it was communicating, we're still here, we're still fighting for you. And that's good and healthy, especially considering, his history and, the way that he grew up. But some of it was just for my own sake. I just needed my son. I just needed him to be okay. I just needed him in our life. And I had to get to that exact same place that you were, Melissa. And it was very painful because I was like, what if he never comes back? But I was kind of dragging down the rest of my children and my household with my feelings and my needing something from my son. And when you said I needed something from my son, exactly. I think I actually, I wrote a book called For Your Glory. It's a parenting and marriage study, marriage and parenting study. It's on Amazon. And I actually think I use those exact words. Like I needed something from him and I had to not need something from him. Yeah. And I had to take my family and move on without him, which was so painful.
Yeah. But it's so counterintuitive to a mother's thought process.
Exactly. But I had to show the rest of my kids, you matter too.
Right.
And that I didn't know if that conflict would ever end. I didn't know if he would ever come back. And he did, thank Jesus. We actually have a really great relationship now. I mean, this was almost 10 years ago. Right. Maybe 9 years ago, something like that. But yeah, so, there are going to be times when we have relationships that they're at a standstill. They're at a stalemate. Is that the word for it? Like,
I think so.
They're just not moving forward in the way that you would like, if you're looking for healing and healthiness and wholeness. And we can't fix that for you. The other person, really can't fix it for you. Like you just have to focus on your relationship with Jesus in that time, and remembering your value does not come from this weirdness in this relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Or
You're
how the
worth
person
who you are.
Yeah, well, because sometimes when the conflict doesn't feel resolved, the person has a skewed
of who you are,
a skewed perspective, a view. That's the word. A skewed view of who you are. And that is very difficult for me to live with. Yeah. I think it's difficult for a lot of people, but I know for me, it is very difficult for me. And I just have to remember God is my defender and the truth will come out.
Yeah.
What I'm say.
Well, I was going to say, and this is so I talk about emotions a lot because I
Mhm.
am naturally a very emotional person, and it's really easy to listen to our emotions over listening to God's truth. And
Mhm.
this is one of those situations where you have got to lock down your emotions and
Yeah.
you just go. I think I've shared this here before that I went through a period in my life where I was really struggling to see myself the way God saw me. So I wrote down probably 3
Yeah.
pages of words that he says about who I am. And
Mm.
he says this about us. This isn't
Mhm.
me imagining or guessing. This is like
Right.
what he says about us and what he says about who he is for us. And I wrote it down and I taped it to my walls. And I looked at those things every day
Yeah.
and I said them out loud because I'm like, this
Mhm.
is who I am to God, because I was struggling to not let my emotions take over,
Mhm.
feelings take over, because feelings are not always representation of truth. They are
Oh,
often a
often.
representation of a lie. And
Right.
but they can become our truth if we're not careful. And so yes, if we're in a relationship with someone where it's just kind of at a standstill, we
Mhm.
know we don't want to walk away from the relationship.
Mhm.
So we want to stay, but the staying is hurting almost as much as walking away. And
Right.
so then we start in it, like you said, if they often have a skewed point of view of who we are, that is where we hold on to what does God say about us and who do
Yes.
we know we are in him.
Exactly. Exactly. And then I want to go
Mhm.
back to, if you were at in the first episode or the first part of this mini series, the theme verse passages, theme passage. I can speak.
You've
The
got this.
theme. I know. The
We've been
theme.
talking for like 2 hours straight.
I know. The theme passage that this mini series came from, and that it's loving in action. And when somebody has hurt us with their unwillingness to resolve conflict, we still have a choice to love them.
Yep.
And I don't mean you love being around them, and I don't mean
Mhm.
you have to hug them. I mean, you love them in action. Love should be
Mhm.
sincere. We should hate what is evil and cling to what is good.
Mhm.
We don't dwell in our minds on the things the person has done to wrong us. We think
Right.
of what is good and we focus on what is good and we cling to what is good. We devote ourselves to loving each other and honoring each other above ourselves, honoring the
Mhm.
relationship above ourselves. If there's
Mhm.
any chance at this relationship succeeding and healing one day, you want to be proud of the decisions you made all along the way.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had one of my closest friends and we've had 2 times where we almost ended our friendship.
Mhm.
And we both were seeking the Holy Spirit. And truly and honestly, I think that's the only reason that our relationship has survived.
Right.
It's a good relationship lots of
Yeah.
the time, but like
Yeah.
through these turbulence. And we both have said that there were things we wanted to say to the other person, but knew that might be the final straw.
Yeah.
And we were like, if there's any chance of there being a friendship on the other side of this thing needs to leave the
Yeah.
conversation. And
Yeah.
it's not something we didn't mean. It's maybe a truth that didn't need to be said right then. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And anyway,
Yeah.
and so, just we're to live in harmony with each other. And sometimes that means that we love on the other person when it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
I was in conflict, this 2-year conflict that just didn't seem to end. And I saw something that just screamed this person and
Mhm.
bought it for them
Mhm.
and was like, I wanted you to have this. And that
Mhm.
this thing means a lot to this person because it
Mhm.
is so this person.
Them. Yeah.
And now we're not in that conflict anymore. And
Mhm.
I'm so glad I did that. And
Yeah.
it's like, just to try to get over, and just to try to get over the bitterness and the
Yep.
anger, because that's the devil's playground. And I
Yep.
actually had, I know I've shared this, that I had a season in my life where I was letting the water boil over and I couldn't keep the lid on anymore. And I took the lid off and it went everywhere. And I had to remove myself from a very, very close relationship for 9 months.
Mhm.
And I was actively in therapy, actively seeking guidance and wisdom. And how do I make this better? Not, because I was going to be back in a relationship with this person and I knew that
Mhm.
that was right. But I didn't want to make it worse in the meantime. So I said, I
Right.
need some space. We talked about that. You actually challenged people in relationships with fire starters on maybe you need to take some space
Yep.
to figure out how to be in a relationship with this person because you can't make them change. And
Right.
I'll never forget, on my own birthday, I felt, okay, back up. It was a sad birthday for me. I was home alone. My husband, stinking husband, took a 24-hour shift, which meant not even 1 minute of my birthday was he home. He has since learned, as he should have known, no, thank you. Please take off at least some hours of my birthday.
Yeah.
And I actually, Melissa, we were in kind of a weird place and she drove to my town that day and then left.
I did.
Yeah. And
Okay.
didn't stop to see me. And I found out and I was hurt. And later you were like, oh, I forgot to call you on your birthday. And I was like, Like
Oh,
it was just
weird. I don't even remember this.
It was a really crappy birthday for me.
Sounds crappy.
And this person that I had removed myself from for 9 months on my birthday, I went to Starbucks and got myself my free little drink to try and make myself feel a little better. And I heard, I mean, God, I've never heard God speak audibly to me, but he speaks right into my soul. And I heard, you need to call this person on your birthday and own some things. And I was like, I'm sorry, on my birthday, my already terrible birthday.
Yeah.
Stuck home with these little children. Nobody's taking care of me. And but I prayed about it, and I was so thankful. By the grace of God, I got the person's voicemail, and I didn't have to speak to them in person, but I left the message.
Yeah.
And just said, I've been thinking about you. I know I pulled away. I'm really working hard. I know that I will have some things I need to own up to. I know that I will have things that I need to listen to, ways that I've hurt you. And I just want you to know I love you. And I left that message, and I will never regret leaving that message. Right. In fact, if anything, it maybe softened it for when I was willing to come back into the relationship. How we love people in our conflict matters, even when they're the ones hurting us.
Right. It's true. So I want to talk about what happens when conflict severs the relationship, because we know that happens sometimes. Sometimes it happens with family. One of my best friends has had to put strong boundaries around biological family because she's come through a lot of healing, but they were continuing to tear her down. And so in order for her to stand on healthy ground, she needed to put up these really strong boundaries that she hasn't severed the relationship, but it's really put them in at arm's length. And it's not out of pride or anger or anything. It's out of taking care of herself. And but for me, I had a relationship. I'm not going to go into any details about this, but I had a relationship years ago that hurt me so bad, did something so painful, and they had zero apology for it. They actually defended what they did to hurt me so bad. To be clear,
it was not me.
It was it was not Rachel. It was nobody in my family. And I had to sever that relationship because there could be no healing when they were standing by the hurtful, terribly hurtful decision that they had made that was directed towards my family. And one of our brothers came to me and said, "Is that biblical to sever a relationship?" And I said, "That's a good question." I prayed a lot about it. Bill prayed a lot about it. He actually was the one who was like, "We're done." And on my behalf. And that he's a very strong man, but he doesn't do that kind of thing. And so I think he knew I couldn't do it. So he did it for me, and he knew I needed to. So anyways, I went to the Bible. I wish I would have thought to look up these verses before we got on here. But I read verse after verse after verse where it had verses about healing a relationship. It had verses about having to walk away from a relationship. And so I went back to my brother and I said, although healing is often what we want to do, it was clear through several verses that it's not always going to happen. And I had to walk away from that relationship. And I've never regretted that. I've never felt guilt about it. I've never felt sad about it. It was a peaceful thing for me. And it's hard. It's hard when we are in a relationship because if we're at a place where we need to walk away from someone that we love, that's how bad it's gotten. And that is, I'm sorry for you if you're in that place. I'm getting emotional. I don't even know why, just because I'm hurting for people who have to end relationships. That is not a small thing.
Right.
So although we would always encourage healing and restoration and waiting it out and praying through it, there are times where the only thing you can do is walk away.
Well, and sometimes just the boundaries that, let's say you don't walk away, you just put up so many boundaries, the relationship just completely changes and it just maybe dissolves. Boundaries, let the Holy Spirit guide you with that. Like, what do they, which ones do I need to put up? Are they for a season? Things like that. So let's wrap this up. Do we have a challenge for this particular one when conflict doesn't feel resolved? It's kind of a depressing one to end on.
When I'm like all emotional.
Well, yeah, you really are being a buzzkill. It's just a hard one. It's just a hard topic.
As soon as we were getting on to record this, we're like, oh,
yeah, here we go.
It is. And it's because people, I mean, it hurts. It hurts when you're in this position wherever you're at, and it hurts.
It does. It hurts a lot.
I can't think of a challenge. Do you have one?
Well, one, I guess, yeah, this just came to me. So we have a person that we love who has a very, very, this kind of a relationship with their mother. And our mom advised this person, just act like everything's fine. If your mother says everything's fine and you can't change anything, even though you know it's not fine, act like it's fine. Just there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah.
You can't make a person admit that everything's not fine or whatever.
Yeah. That's kind of what I did with my son I was talking about. I had to get to a place where I'm like, well, he says we're fine. He says he's not angry at me. He says he doesn't hate me when he looks at me like he does. So I have to act like we're fine.
Yes. And when my son stepped out of our life, I had to move on and act like we were fine. And sometimes there's just nothing else you can do. And so I guess my challenge to you would be, if you're in this place, remember who you serve, remember where your comfort, comes from, keep a kingdom perspective, but also if there's nothing else you can do, move on and be fine. I mean, that's not the best news, but this person we love, she said it was actually incredibly healing for her. And I hear you saying that about you as well with your son.
It was the best thing I could do. And what ended up happening, because we're not completely out of the woods of this time in his life yet, but what ended up happening is that I was so sad all the time that it made it worse. So when I just started deciding to act like everything was fine, then I had moments of him being normal with me, not all the time, but moments, whereas I wasn't even getting moments. And I think I was exasperating that by just being so sad.
Yes.
And what he said to me at one point, he said, I know I'm not myself and I make you cry and I don't like that. And so I think that if I could keep my tears at bay has helped him he knows something's not right and he feels guilty about it, but he doesn't know how to deal with it. So then he's just shutting down even more.
Yes. Cause we can definitely make things worse.
Yeah. So well, thank you for joining us during this series. We'd really love to hear from you guys if this was helpful, if breaking it down into 4 individual topics on conflict was helpful. Rachel had said in a different one of these that we'd like to know if you'd like more mini series. Like, we just would love feedback in any way. So you can do that at amessnonetheless@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and you can also go to our website.
Also, I'm just realizing I should check that email. I want to check your emailing us. And so maybe social media is better. Maybe just email last. Like, I have so many emails, but it's easier for me to get.
So let's say that again. How about you instant message us on Facebook or Instagram?
Yes. Oh, God.
Those
I'm just checking it.
Check.
Oh, I'm just checking it. I don't have any emails with you. I would put you in charge of checking the emails, but we know you are not great at checking emails.
I hate communicating by email. It is the worst for me.
Oh my gosh. This is so funny. So social media is a great way to reach out to us.
Great way.
Okay. Bye guys.
All right. Bye guys.